America is home to 33 million small businesses, the beating heart of communities across the country.
And proof that the American dream is still alive.
This is a show about those dreamers and doers and the communities they serve.
Their real life stories.
Their struggles and successes.
Their grit, determination, and passion.
And the people who fight
to keep their American dream alive.
I'm Alfredo Ortiz.
I'm Elaine Parker.
And it's time for another episode of Main Street Matters,
America's small business megaphone.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone. I'm Tony Angelini with the Job Creators Network, and today we are joined by Carlos Ruiz. Carlos oversees all operations at HT Metals in Arizona. As a business leader, Carlos participates heavily in the direction of the local business community and is a partner of the Job Creators Network Foundation. Carlos joins us today to talk about his latest op-ed, which gets into how small businesses really need Congress to extend the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Carlos, welcome to Main Street Matters. Thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you. It's great to be here, Tony.
Well, so let's talk about it. Tell us what you've got going on at HT Metals these days, how long you've been there, sort of give us the, sort of the elevator pitch for your small business, and then we'll get into your recent op-ed and what the extension of the Tax Cuts and Job Act would mean to HT Metals.
Sure. HT Metals is a provider of custom cut raw material to precision manufacturing companies and fabricators here in southern Arizona and central Arizona. We use abrasive water jet machines that are behind me to create these custom shapes out of sheet and plate. We also have a bandsaw in the back here where we cut machining blanks from bar stock. We've been in business. I started the business back in 2003, so it's going on about just about 22 years. We started out small. I didn't have this type of equipment, but organically over time, I've bought pieces of equipment as my customers asked for, more sophisticated raw materials sourcing.
And Carlos, speaking of the Tax Cuts and Job Act, there were a lot of provisions in there that enabled businesses like yours to be able to purchase large-scale, expensive equipment and deduct it over time instead of just within that one calendar year. Have you been able to take advantage of that?
Oh, absolutely. When I first bought my first piece of equipment, which is over here off of my right shoulder, that was not under any kind of that was just a normal expensing where you depreciate it over time. And then when we had the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, I bought the other piece of equipment over on my left-hand shoulder. And that one we were able to expense immediately. We also did upgrades to the pumps, and again that was all expensed immediately. And what that did is, it allowed us to increase our capacity without having to go on to extra shifts. I was able to, grow the business, get more customers. Give better benefits to my employees as far as improve their health care, insurance, the 401. Well, we use a simple IRA, but IRA contributions, raises. So overall, it was it grew our business, and we were able to pass that on to our employees.
So you would, it sounds like, directly attribute your ability to pass on those benefits to your employees to the initial passage of the Tax Cuts and Job Act?
Yeah, that was in 2017. So we, tracking sales. When I know you guys did a kind of a bus tour back right after the Tax Cuts and Job Act, and you came through Tucson. and it had already started, filtering in, and we saw, I saw it. I think I came to that with a chart. I mean, I saw a increase in sales, month over month after that was passed, and so what happened? It spurred demand. Our customers were feeling, you know, more enthusiastic about business. We're probably a second tier supplier of raw material. You have your big aerospace primes like Honeywell or GE, and then they'll buy components from precision machine shops and assemblies. And what we do is we provide that raw material to that level. And so there was just, with the with the tax cuts, the whole economy was just picking up steam, and all of that was filtering down. And with the immediate expensing, we could take advantage of buying pieces of equipment to support that extra economic activity.
A little job creators history that you referenced. So we did come through Tucson. We've been in that area a few times, but back when it was time to, it was sort of questionable whether or not the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was going to be passed by the end of 2017, or if it would be kicked into a future congressional session. And Job Creators Network sort of said, we can't wait another minute for the Tax Cuts and Job Act to see the light of day. So we went to work, and we activated small business owners from across the country, yourself included, and to really hammer home into Congress the importance of getting the Tax Cuts and Job Act passed that year. And of course, the media does what the media often does. Once it was passed, everyone was running around, screaming that it was, the top 1% were the only ones benefiting from the passage of it. And, the talking points just sort of got more and more insane as time went on. So to your point, we went on the Tax Cuts Work bus tour, and we went throughout the country, dozens of states, just as many, individual cities, and we stopped. And at each stop, we had local media that was there telling the stories like yours, of the local small business owners and what they were doing with the quote unquote proceeds of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And we heard day in, day out from people just like you, that really what the small business owners were doing was they were reinvesting into their own small businesses. They were giving their employees raises. They were, increasing the benefits like you referenced. No one was, booking a vacation to Tahiti with the thanks to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Everyone was benefiting from it. And, when a business like yours is doing well, there's I hate to use the phrase, but there's a trickle down effect. You have your employees are doing better, your community around you is doing better, and ultimately it is the small business community that lifts up the local economies across this country. So our Tax Cuts Work bus tour was a great opportunity to remind people of that. And now here we are in 2025, where it's hard to believe, but we're starting to really see the sunset of a lot of these provisions is very close. And there's a lot of economic uncertainty these days, and it's crazy to believe. I feel like I blinked, and we're sort of at the end here, but what are you hearing from fellow small business owners, and what will, personally, how would it impact you if the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was to sunset and you weren't to have,
Right.
these benefits that you're currently enjoying, and, as are all your employees?
Well, and another thing in that package, my business is a subchapter S. So my whatever profit that this business makes, it flows onto my personal return with my wife and I. And so the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, it also it had the a $20,000 um, uh, automatic deduction, uh, so that what was happening is that the corporate, the C corps, the big or people that file as a C corp, they were getting a tax uh, cut on their taxes that they were going to have to pay. But there wasn't anything in there for LLCs or partnerships or sole proprietorships or S corporations like ourselves. And so, I know Job Creators Network was really key in putting that provision in there. So here's what's going to happen. If this thing doesn't pass, all of a sudden $20,000 deduction goes away. And so, I'm going to be paying, I'm going to be seeing just on that $20,000 a tax increase at whatever personal rate that my wife and I are in, whatever bracket that we're in. That's automatically, we're going to see $20,000, which a deduction that we had automatically. And then I think there's probably some tax rate changes that'll happen. So, a small business like mine is automatically going to have to take more money from its profit set aside just to pay taxes, not to invest, just to send it to the government. And and if I've been following what President Trump and Elon Musk with Doge and even all the secretaries, what they're finding, and I do not want any more of that money going to um, just foolishness. Um, it I can manage my business better. I can take care of my employees better. I can do much better having that money stay within the business, stay within the community, uh, circulate in my community, than have it, frittered away by a bloated federal government. So that's really what's at stake here. And another key thing, this type of small business tax cut, it wasn't targeted to manufacturing companies. It wasn't targeted to it was just common sense um, small business tax cuts. So if you were a baker and you wanted to buy an oven, you could go ahead and do that and help grow your business. In my case, I bought these pieces. I upgraded and bought another pump, and that's what we used it for. If you were, any kind of business, any kind of small business, you were allowed to take that and use it as you see fit to grow your business and to take care of your employees. And I say, we are still paying off some of this debt here. At some point we're going to want to upgrade up and but in the meantime, as we've grown and as we've gotten more profitable, and as the amount of those profits have increased, I've paid more taxes. My taxes that I've paid have gone up over these years. So yes, I might have had some tax breaks early on to invest in the business, but that money, it's come back. I've sent more money to the federal government in taxes than I used to when I was a much smaller business. So I mean, tax cuts don't work and we wrote about that in the op-ed. Tax cuts don't just work in a vacuum. They, as you become more profitable, as you grow, you, the businesses pay more taxes. We have more revenue in this country now in these current years than we did before, and it's because of these tax cuts.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You referenced your op-ed. There was some interesting arguments in there. There's been a lot of, people are sort of comparing the McDonald's price increases to the tax cuts, and how do you sort of square that with people? How flawed of an argument do you see that as being?
Well, that's a really good example. We've when we had it, we still have inflation. It's come down, but I don't eat out a lot. I tend to bring stuff in and eat at my desk throughout the day. But my employees, they do go out. They do go out to fast food, and they were seeing rising food costs at fast food places. And what ends up happening? They start cutting back because um, and the other thing they do is they I guess the fast food places have gotten smart and they have all these apps. So they shop the apps, and
Mm.
so like a McDonald's, if they just keep raising and doubling and tripling, their sales decrease. And I think we're finding that because now all of a sudden I see McDonald's every once in a while. I'll stop by on the way home if I'm a little hungry, and and they have they've come out with little targeted new meal plans that are like $5, and it's because it got a little bit out of control and they saw their sales decrease and they had to figure out how to bring you know a lower price meal to people because it was getting a little bit too expensive for people. So that's what happens if McDonald's triples their prices. Guess what? People just don't. Um, they just slow their spending, and that franchise owner has to figure out how to get more people into their business. So it doesn't work that way where you can just raise prices forever and ever and people will just keep absorbing that.
Well, it's also I love the argument that, it's somehow the government can just sort of keep taking in more money, spending more money than they're taking in. And, people say that, the government should run like a business. It's like, well, number one, day one of any business is not spending more money than you're bringing in. And we are so far, that horse is so out of the barn at this point. If we don't do things like Doge, it's only going to mean economic peril for future generations to come. And if the U.S. government was a private sector business, an Elon Musk type character getting in there and cleaning house and getting rid of anything that doesn't really align with its core mission would be the first thing that someone would do. And I think it'll be really interesting to see what the appetite of the American people really is in the
Yeah.
long term for this. I'm all for it. You can count me in for it. But at some point, it'll be interesting to kind of see how much pain we can all take collectively. Um, what and I hate to even ask the question because unfortunately I think I know the answer. But is there any hope of some kind of bipartisan support to keep our economy sort of moving in a positive direction and and making the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act permanent, at least some of the provisions in there, so that businesses like yours can continue to thrive and lift up your local communities?
Yeah, I think the most we can hope for is maybe another extension. I don't see the Democrats, even in the Senate. I don't they I think the House is starting to come together, and uh, they just need a majority. So it's a slim majority, but they seem to be kind of coalescing a little bit better than they have in the past. It's just the Senate. There's not going to, I think anything kind of permanent is going to require 60 votes, and I don't see seven, I don't see seven moderate um, Democrat senators to join with the 53 Republican senators to pass something that's permanent. So I think we're going to have to do something where it's a reconciliation, and it extends it for another 5-6 years or however long they're able to, and hopefully in that meantime, maybe the Senate will become a 60-seat majority, and then that's the time that they need to strike, and get that done. But I mean, even a 5-year extension, I think would just like would if they could get more than or 6 years, if they could get some sort of extension, just to give people some more certainty, um, and some more breathing room.
It would certainly get us over the hump, hopefully,
Yeah.
of this what is going on right now. And it really is a testament to where we are at, and sort of the politicization of everything at this point in our country. It wasn't all that long ago that tax cuts for small businesses really weren't that controversial of a topic. You could easily get bipartisan support for something like that, but unfortunately, the left they have painted themselves into such a corner,
Yes.
that they won't even agree on the time of day with the right at this point, for fear of being thrown out of their own party. But it'll be certainly interesting to see, especially as the midterms sort of start to develop, where some of these more vulnerable congressional seats start to fall on the political spectrum. And
Mm-hmm.
we can only hope that will work to the advantage of small business owners across the country. But like I said, it's unfortunately I'm not all that optimistic.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. We
what
have our
what
one
would you
senator.
say?
Yeah. No, our one senator,
No, go
Mark
ahead.
Kelly, our one senator, Mark Kelly, he seems to his visibility seems to be rising right now, and it might be because he is. I think he's up in 2 years, but I mean, still, some of the comments that he makes, he's not getting it, as far as I'm concerned. As far as like when he comments about his same comments about, oh, this extension would reach the billionaires, and and I would invite Mr. Senator Kelly, come down and see my business and see and see what we do here, and we're not, I'm not, Mr. Fat Cat millionaire billionaire, and these kinds of things help our employees, and help a business. I mean, we're a niche business. There's no one else like us in Tucson, and it's because of some of this stuff that allows us to compete with some much bigger, um, metal distributors, because of these, the environment, the business environment has allowed this company to survive 23 years.
Well, here's hoping that Senator Kelly will take you up on that at some point, because you have been a phenomenal advocate for the small business community for us for about 10 years now, and I know how passionate you are, not just about public policy but about your employees. You and I have had plenty of conversations over the years about how important it is to you personally to make sure that the people that work there are well cared for, and it's small business owners like you that keep us all going. So I hope that that Senator Kelly will genuinely be receptive to that invitation, because if it's doing things like that ultimately will keep this country on the right foot. So here's hoping.
Mm-hmm.
Carlos, tell us where people can find out more information about HT Metals or you personally,
Yeah.
and anything else you want to share with our viewers.
Yeah. The website is htmetals.com. We're in Tucson, Arizona, and we're actually I'm getting my ISO 9001 certification here in another couple weeks. So we're going to have we've operated under that kind of quality business management system for years, but now it's time to establish and get a certification, which will help us in some of our marketing and who customers that may want to do business with a a certified company. And yeah, I try to write opinions on all kinds of things. I try to stay very active in local politics, and I try to educate my employees on the importance of voting. In fact, just today there's uh, a sales tax that the city here wants to raise sales taxes again. We would be the highest. We would be the highest city in Arizona of this size if this sales tax passes. So I try to educate my employees on how that would be detrimental to their own personal circumstance and the city as a whole, and to make sure that they vote how they study it and how it. But those are the kind of things I think small businesses really have to. Um, it's just part of the job. It's part of the job to be, an example for your community and for your employees, to make them aware of, the complexities.
I couldn't agree more, Carlos. It's one of the it's why Job Creators Network does what we do. Our founder, may he rest in peace, Bernie Marcus, he set out with that mission to not tell people how to vote, but to explain to people the impact that public policy was going to have on their lives and let them decide what they wanted to do with that information. So yeah, you're very much preaching to the choir here, but it is a responsibility, and it's one I think that we all take really seriously. Well, Carlos, thank you. Thank you very much for taking the time to join Main Street Matters. We are part of the Salem Podcast Network. New episodes debut every Wednesday and Friday. Please subscribe to salempodcastnetwork.com or wherever you get your podcasts, and we will be back soon with another episode. Goodbye for now.